Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not to Comic Book. This being a show where we talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the season premiere of Riverdale as well as the latest episode of Stumptown. Like always, if I'm talking about something that you want to listen to, you can always look in the description down below. I clear the time and I start talking about each of the respective shows. So, for example, if you want to hear what I had to say about the season premiere of Riverdale, you can skip to what I had to say about this week's episode of Stumptown. But the first thing I'm going to talk about is season premiere of Riverdale. A great episode, obviously a very somber one. And just in the grand scheme of things, I think it's kind of like beautiful, just like what the episode represents, but that's all the episode was. It was like, it's not like the most, in a sense, I'm saying plot driven in the sense that it is this contained episode where it's like we're not trying to set up other plot and stuff like that. It's kind of like just having this episode be what it is. And obviously that's dealing with the whole Fred situation. Obviously, they're, celebrating for like the 4th of July. They're actually putting on a parade this time. Obviously, they haven't done one since Jason died. So obviously, it's a heavy-hearted weekend. Because even for Cheryl, because she was upset because it's like what this represents, and you're kind of doing something, and now this weekend is kind of marked for even more tragedy. Now because of Fred's situation. I was actually surprised. I didn't think they'd handle the situation the way they did, but I think it was a nice way they handled it in the sense of like it being an accident, the reason why Fred died, because I don't know, I wasn't expecting them to make it like that. And I was like, so they're going to make a plot relevant thing, because even like the whole fact is that it was a hit and run situation, because obviously the moment Archie heard that, he was like, wait, what? So that's obviously something that kind of weighs heavy on him, and it's something I brought up last season. That's kind of like I figured it's actually sadly ties into the story to a certain extent, because Fred was about Archie's age when he lost his dad, so, because that was something we learned about him last season. And so sadly to almost see history kind of repeat itself in that regard, like obviously, like I don't know if they're going to ever like really tie that into that situation. I mean, regardless of this story or not, it's never easy, I mean, I'm not in that position, but I would assume it'd just be hard at any age to lose your father, so it's just this whole situation, because obviously it's like, he had that dream about his grandfather being like, it's up to you to bring your dad home, and that's what the episode is. It's him, because it's like, no, my dad needs to be here in Riverdale, he can't just be left where he is. So and I thought that was kind of beautiful how it's just whatever it represents, like even his friends are gathered around telling stories about stuff about Fred, of just how much of an awesome dude he was. And obviously it's not the easiest thing for Archie, because even part of him still can't believe, like, when he actually gets to the funeral home, it's like, maybe it's not my dad. I have to go see for myself, but he couldn't bring himself to actually go in, so Veronica and Betty went in for him. He even asked, Jughead to write about him, Archie's very lucky in the sense that he has like a lot of people that obviously care about him, all people that, Fred in some shape or form, touched and, was there in their lives in many different regards, so. And what I was talking about earlier, obviously, because the struggle for Archie, too, is when he finds out the circumstances around how his dad died. Because it's like, for one, it's like, because obviously you're in a heightened sense, it's still so fresh. It's literally like the day after finding out, that he goes to get his dad's body. Because it's like, I can't wait like a couple more days just for my dad's body to be brought back to River. It's like, I got to do it myself. But finding out like the reason why his dad died, because he was helping someone, who was having car issues, and during that situation someone drove by and hit him and killed him. And Archie ends up learning the situation because the lady that he helped came and visited, and she was like, he actually pushed me out of the way, he saved my life, which it fits who Fred was. Fred stopping on by the road to help a stranger, who he is. The fact is he would do that, save someone's life like that, sacrificing his own, You know, even Archie, because he's in the middle of processing it all, it's just kind of, for him, it's like, but yeah, that's who my dad was, but it's like, why did he have to do it this one time? This one time made the difference. This one time, he had to be the good guy. This one time, he had to do something selfless, ended up costing him his life. Because for Archie, it's like, if there were any other circumstance, it feels so senseless, like it's just some random thing in the world. And that, you know, that's not the easiest thing to deal with, you know, a loss of just kind of like some random nature, you know, especially on these circumstances. Especially for him, it's like, my dad died, you know, away from his family and his friends on the side of a road. But I like to think that that lady was there for him. She stayed by his side, you know, through it all. But still, you know, and she even talked about the fact is that Archie was always, you know, on his mind. That when they were there, like, because that's why she knew Archie immediately. Because she's like, your dad just talked about how lucky he is that it's like, how a man like me have such a great kid like him. And, you know, for Archie, and that's something that weighs heavy on Archie, because Archie's like, I've made so many mistakes. I've done this, I've done that, I've lied to my dad. And the fact of the matter is, like, you know, bagging on himself for every mistake he's made, which is like, you're human, you make mistakes. And you know, Veronica had, especially because Archie ended up finding out, you know, the person behind all of this. It's like this dude named George confessed, and Archie's driven by revenge. It's like, no, I gotta find out who this dude is. Why did he kill my dad? Was he drunk? Was he on the phone? Like, what was the circumstances? And Archie burst into the house, like when the dude had opened the door, slamming against the wall, punching the wall, and was like, tell me why you did it. And I had a feel, because I was halfway expecting it to be what it is. I thought it was, but I thought it was going to be a kid who answered the door first to be like, I'm sorry. I was curious like how Archie was going to handle, but the moment he found him, like it was like the dude's son, was it Jeffrey, was like, it was me, it wasn't him. I stole the car when he told me not. I took the car out when he told me not to. I don't even have my license, and I panicked. And that stops Archie, because for him it's like, and he even says it himself, it's like, I did what that kid has done countless times, you know? So it's like, how can I blame him for basically being a stupid teenager when, in fact, I've been a stupid teenager. I'm currently a stupid teenager. So it's like, how can I blame him for making some mistake like that, you know? And I think that's the hardest thing. And I think, like I said, I like that being something where it's not like a season-long mystery. It is a thing that is settled in this episode. That the fact of the matter is that sad situation. That's sadly, you know, and it's, you know, it is what it is type of thing of like, there's no, sometimes just, to be blunt, terrible shit happens, and it does seem senseless. It doesn't seem like it's part of some grand plan or something like that, you know? So, like I said, not having someone, like, you know, it's like, at the very least, if you had someone target all your grief and anger at, that's one thing, but to, you know, to see what it is, like, all that anger kind of just fades away, like I said, because for him, he's just like, what the hell am I even doing here? My dad would be so disappointed in me, but Veronica's like, no, your dad loved you, and he was always proud of you, you know? And, you know, at the same time, you know, Archie's mom pulling strings to kind of, you know, talking to the morgue guy about, funeral home guy, sorry, to release the body to Archie so he can bring him home. And obviously you had like that whole thing with Tony and Cheryl, where Cheryl wanted to do something nice for Fred, and I thought it was kind of a beautiful thing where she was like, you know, this time a couple years ago was kind of the worst moment for me because of when I lost Jason. She's like, I was alone and I was kind of drowning in darkness, and she's like, I don't want you or Archie to ever have to know that darkness, you know? So she wanted to do something special, and on their way back, Archie, you know, gets escorted by FP. It's like, I want to give your father like a police escort through town. And they look around town. It's what Cheryl had set up, that basically it was a parade celebrating Fred Andrews. And it's something that Archie had talked about. The fact of the matter, like I said, in some shape or form, Fred has touched everyone's heart. I mean, that's why so many people were willing to vote for him when he was running for mayor back then, because of who he is, that he was this good, honest dude, you know? And to see so much love and support from the town, you know, for losing their own. Someone that maybe they didn't always know that well, but the fact of the matter is so many people gathered around to celebrate this person. And I think that's the beauty of what, you know, Cheryl had set up, because it's, you know, where it's like, everything around Jason was all about death, and there was so much turmoil behind it. But it's a celebration of Fred Andrews' life. The fact is that, you know, even in his final moment, like, he went out doing something selfless, being a hero, you know, being who he is, true to himself, you know. And, you know, Archie, obviously, you know, at the funeral, telling the story about his dad, like, them not being able to do the fireworks, but his dad bringing some home, and they lit some up that night, you know. So, I don't know. I just thought that was kind of beautiful. A beautiful service. And obviously, like I said, this isn't like some plot-heavy episode of like, oh yeah, like the grand scheme of things of what this means necessarily going forward this season. But I think, obviously, the one thing you can pull away from this episode, plot heavy wise, would be like, well, what does this mean for Archie? Because Archie says, you know, the world would be better off if everyone in it was like half the man my father was. And, you know, you have Veronica being like, and that's you, Archie. And Archie's like, I'm not, but I'm going to be. The fact is, I'm going to honor my dad every day. And I think I'm curious to see what that means going forward for Archie. Like, obviously, still carrying this in the rest of the season. Obviously, you know, what this means for his growth as a character, stuff like that. Not just him, but everyone around him. I think we're going to see a shift potentially in Archie's character going forward, that he is going to, you know, try to not let the mistakes of his past, like, you know, it's always been something, that a little bit of that darkness that he's always kind of struggled with over the course of the series. And I think this will be the moment that really makes him kind of shine a light, let that light in him grow and kind of blot out the dark, not blot out, but break through the darkness in a sense, you know. So that's one aspect to it. I thought it was kind of interesting too, because like I said, like how this episode did a lot for in many different regards. Like, for example, it got Betty thinking about her dad. It's like, yeah, he was the Black Hood, and even his grave is, you know, besmirched and everything. Because even then, like, you know, it got her thinking about, yeah, like, no matter how terrible my dad is, there is a part of me that still misses him, you know? And I think that's something heavy that obviously she has, you know, she has to live with, like, you know. And even, you know, Veronica finding out the person who paid for the funeral and services and all that was her dad. It's like, even as evil as he is, he recognized how much of a good person Fred was. And it's like, they were never like on the best of terms. Obviously, they had a very complicated relationship because of everything that Hiram put Archie through. So it's not like they were best friends, but I think that speaks volume that even on this somber moment, it's not like he let his villainy get the best of him. It's like, no, I'm gonna do what's right by this man's family, because we weren't always seeing eye to eye, but the fact of the matter is, you know, what this represents, you know. So I thought that was kind of neat. And even like, you know, Hermione, like in her jail cell crying at the, you know, what Jughead had written about him. And, you know, it's like, right, it didn't even cross my mind to think like how it would affect her. It's like, yeah, her and Fred, not only, you know, where they were in season one, the affair that they were having, but also even because we saw it last season, like even what they had back then when they were part of like, was it the Midnight Club? Like that group, you know, that there was something there back then, just kind of like how different things could have been, you know, except everyone's lives went down different routes. So, but to see her kind of broken up about it, because no matter what the circumstances may have been, you know, Fred was someone that she did care about, you know. So I don't know. It's just, in the grand scheme of things, it's just, like I said, a somber episode. And you know, just, you know, kind of pulling back from the veil and everything, I think it was, you know, a beautiful tribute to, you know, Luke Perry. And, you know, like I said, this is the one role, like, I got to, you know, because I'm not familiar with a lot of his work. I'm, like, I know, like, some of the work he's, like, known for and stuff, but, like, this is, like, the one thing of his that I probably say I'm the most familiar with, you know, when it comes into his work. So it's just that thing of, like, obviously, you know, it's that, you know, rest in peace, Luke Perry, you know. It's not like I'm saying that someone like, oh, I knew him or whatever, but it's still just a sad situation regardless. You know, it had to be a heavy episode to make, but I still think it is a beautiful, like a send-off in a sense also of, remembering not just the character but also the actor behind the character. And just one of those things of, like I said, the episode doesn't do a lot to let's set up, no, it's like, no, there's no setup, let's just let this episode be what it is, and then afterwards, obviously, like I said, the only thing going forward would be like the effect this has on Riverdale. Even that moment of Archie being like, all he has to do is look around, like if he ever has kids, like tell his kids, point to any building, point to any brick and be like, your grandfather built this, like he was kind of the heart and soul of Riverdale, so. But like I said, it just being an episode of, just this moment, so I don't know, like if you could take anything away from this episode, obviously like not just your own fathers, but if you're fortunate enough to be in a situation, in the case of your dad, still being around, make sure you call him, make sure, and like I said, not just your fathers, but obviously in the symbolism of that in particular, but obviously any loved one. Let everyone that you care about know that you love them. Obviously, life is too short. You never know what's going to happen. Whether it be, like, obviously, Luke Perry's situation in real life or even just the circumstances in this episode. Just life can be random sometimes, and it sucks. So hold on and cherish the people that you love while you have the chance, So always keep that in mind. It's something we all kind of forget in our day-to-day lives. I even say it in these recordings and stuff like that, live your life to the fullest, and that includes not just living your life, but also spending time and loving the people that are around you. So, a little bit of like I said, I don't know. It's just one of those episodes or just one of those recordings. I feel like, I can't put it into words, so I'll just leave it at that. And, I think I've said my piece, but like I said, just keep that in mind, so I am interested to see, where we go from here with Riverdale, but like I said, just kind of, not really theorizing about where this season is going to take us right now, just focusing on the episode as it is and just kind of let that stand for now, so that's all. And now moving on to this week's episode of Stumptown, a great episode. A lot of interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, we have Dex, continuing now going down the PI route more officially. And to do that, she's kind of having to work under a PI. In this particular case, she's working under a dude named Artie. Interesting enough, Artie is played by Donald Logue, who obviously, is just coming off of playing Harvey from Gotham, so that's pretty dope. But it's kind of interesting because I feel like he's getting a little typecast as a bit of a scummy guy. Obviously, that goes to many different levels later on in the episode. But at first, he's a little scummy with just some of the way he goes about things. But he seems decent enough. It's actually interesting the way he kind of like pushes Dex along the ropes. I love the fact is that during their first meeting and everything, he's literally sitting in his office, no pants on. I was like, I don't know why that's a thing, but okay. I also love that opening where she's kind of daydreaming a little bit, and they kind of have like this 70s intro and stuff like that. And I just thought that was kind of pretty neat, and her just kind of snapping out of it like, ugh, jeez. But yeah, she's trying to learn from him and everything. Like, obviously he knows a lot about her, but she also shows like, oh, I'm really good at what I do too, because I'm able to find all this stuff about you. And it's like, oh, what's that thing over there? And he's like, I don't know what it is, but it's like worth 14,000. And she's like, oh, he's like, it's worth a lot. And she's just like, ugh, because I guess it's so ugly and tacky. But regardless, they do some investigating because basically this woman, Candace, is going through a very nasty divorce with this dude named Randall. Randall is not the nicest person, but he's rich and powerful, so he kind of gets his way. And so Dex and Artie are on her side trying to dig up any dirt they can help, Candace during her divorce, And, it's a complicated situation because obviously, like, you have Artie there, who's a little bit of a manipulator. He even talks about it because he actually brought Dex along because he knows that she could be someone that kind of persuade Candace to be more on their side. Because like plenty of people come to try and help, but because of Randall's influence, a lot of people end up backing down. But Dex talks about the fact is she understands what Candace is going through to a certain extent. It's like her little brother is all she has. So for her, it's like she would fight tooth and nail if anyone tried to take him from her. So she's going to be there to help Candace keep her baby, because it's also turning into a little bit of a custody, not a little bit, kind of a straight up nasty custody battle in that same regard. So, which even, it's like, wait, you brought me here to manipulate me? He's like, yeah, that's kind of part of the deal and everything like that. It even breaks it down to Dex and asks her, it's like, how much it's like, oh, you want to get a certain percentage from whatever percentage I make off of this. Because he kind of straight up front was like, yeah, it's about the money for me on a certain regard. But at the same time, he asked Dex, is like, how much is this about the girl? She's like, 20% about the girl, 80% about the money. Because she legitimately just needs the money. So there's that side of thing, which I think Dex said that jokingly, because I think it means a lot more to her, because she seems like, and it's like almost got that Jessica Jones effect. I always feel bad because I'm always comparing and contrasting stuff, but it's like Jessica seems like she doesn't care about people, but when she is a part of a case, she cares. Like that's her thing. It's just easier to pretend like you don't. Dex seems very like laissez-faire about certain things, but the fact of the matter is, it's like, no, she does care and she is trying. Like, obviously skirting the lines between what's legal and stuff like that, whether it's bugging the dude's office, which I love her trying to walk in the hills and she can't. Such unfamiliar territory for her. And the moment Randall came in, it's like, oh, you still got the tag on. I was like, don't rip it off. And he rips it off. You could tell it bothered him. I was like, yeah, you can't return that suit now. I figured it's kind of like, well, you probably can as long as you have the receipt and everything, but I'm sure it would still help to kind of keep the tag on. That's what I was immediately thinking. I actually thought Dex got it herself, but it sounds like, it was actually Artie who ended up getting it. So there's that. It's also interesting because obviously, like, Artie was a cop back in the day, which obviously it's just funny with the grand scheme of things. So just like, oh yeah, like him is Harvey Bullock on Gotham, and now this, that like I said, him skirting the line of being kind of a crummy dude, but then at the same time, it's like, oh no, he's actually kind of a good guy in that regard. The whole detective thing. Regardless, so diving into all of that, it was interesting because Hoffman's like, oh yeah, we know about Artie. He's kind of a legend. No one knows why he quit the force, but the fact of the matter is he did. So that was interesting. They end up finding out that Randall has been paying this madam. So it's like, okay, she kind of does this little bit of a prostitution thing, which that actress looks so familiar. I don't know where I know her from. I've seen her in a few things, I feel like. Regardless, it turns out that his wife, Candace, was kind of in that realm. She wasn't like a full-blown prostitute. It was a situation of she didn't have any money, she was out on her own, so she needed help. So this situation came about of like, hey, go on a date with this guy. So like, it seems like Randall was like her first and only situation. So it wasn't, because at first, because it's like, because obviously, Artie kind of goes hard at her because it's like, you should have told us that from the beginning, because obviously this could be something that could be used against you, which obviously Dex isn't trying to judge or anything. It's like, whoa, let's kind of take it easy and kind of hear the story. And for her, like I said, it was just like a one-off thing of like, someone, brought it to her attention. It's like, oh, this could be kind of a money situation. You just go on a date with someone, and, she fell in love with him. Their date, like 48 hours later, they were in Rome and everything, and, so... But the thought process is, if he went down this route like this, then that must mean that there's no way he hasn't gone down this route, that he isn't still currently going down this route. So suggesting that might be a new Candace in his life. I love that, Dex was on the phone with Hoffman, and then you have Artie putting on a note saying, pump him. I'm like... He ends up having to correct it later on by being like, for information about, Randall. But I'm like, yeah, like if you just leave it as pump him, it's like... Wait, what? Like, you initially know, but it's still kind of like the innuendo there is super strong, so double entendre, you get what I'm trying to say. Regardless, an innuendo and a double entendre are the same thing, aren't they? So that was, regardless, going on a tangent. But they ended up following kind of like the dude who handles stuff for Randall. There was a guy that ended up shooting at them. I'm like, oh, whoa. Because at first I was thinking like, oh man, this is crazy. I'm like, it is more people that's... Because obviously there was a whole thing of like, they were in the car and everything, in his car, and the wheel fell off. I was like, that's pretty intense. It's like Randall's way of trying to get him off the case, I guess. And now this person's shooting at them, which is interesting because like him and Dex just had that heart-to-heart, because it's like, hey... it's like, oh, you remind me of my dad. And it's like, oh, tell me about your dad. She's like, I said, you remind me of a dad, not my dad. And it's like, yeah, okay, but still tell me about your dad, which obviously her parents is a subject, because he even brought up to Candace, like, yeah, me and my parents. And she always moves away from that subject. So that's something that's very interesting. And even Artie was like, oh, you should contact your dad, because he brings up the fact it's his daughter and everything. It's like, we haven't had the best relationship, but now we're better. She was connected to drugs and stuff like that 10 years later, but here we are. We're better than ever. It's like, if you have the chance, talk to your dad, make amends before, make things better between you before time's up, which is like, the fact is, the way Dex was kind of acting, I'm wondering, is it the fact is that her dad is alive? Could it be a thing of, like, her dad's alive, but her mom isn't? So, like, what is that situation? Because, like, it's just interesting because it seems like Dex is looking after Ansel, like, by herself. So it makes you wonder about that. Maybe he's a deadbeat dad, and maybe he was just, maybe the only person that was in their life was their mom. But, like, you would think if that was the circumstances, her mom would come up in conversation, but maybe because her mom's not around anymore, maybe it's a bit of a tough subject. But I was kind of wondering if it's a thing straight up of her dad's gone. Whatever the circumstances, maybe her dad's gone, and so that's why it's a bit of a touchy subject, because it's like maybe she never got a chance to make amends. Maybe they did have an argument or something like that, but or whatever issues they did, and he died, and she never got a chance. So maybe him saying that line probably hit, or maybe it is kind of resonating that, hey, maybe I should take a chance to talk to him. I don't know. But then, like I said, it was just kind of interesting, the guy that was shooting at him, but it turns out that's related to a different case Artie had. But it was a powerful moment because in that moment, like, obviously, like, she's having a panic attack because I wonder, is it specifically her military time, or is it specifically stuff related to Benny that led to that? I'm curious, Because it seems like the moment she goes back to in that instance of, like, her PTS, like, deep, like, panic moment was about Benny specifically. So I think that's what triggers it the most, Or maybe it's an added layer to what she was already going through through her military experience. But regardless, because obviously that's a pretty traumatic moment, losing the person you care about most, and even, this entire time has blamed herself for it. As an angle to this I haven't even talked about yet is the fact is I was actually super surprised to see Sue Lin kind of pop up, and it's like, oh, well, what's this about? And it's like, oh, she's connected to Randall, and it's like, oh, that's what and she's like, what is your price to basically get her to walk away from this situation, which that's actually kind of funny. We'll kind of dive into that a little bit later on, but the fact of the matter is, and Sue Lin says an interesting thing about, like, the honorable man, the righteous man, always always speaks the truth, basically brings them closer to death, because, like, the fact of the matter is, when you're so righteous and you hold on to the truth, like, you're so honest that it will lead to people killing you, because your honesty will, I guess, kind of put a target on your back, essentially. So it's like, if you want to be all very righteous and stuff like that, all it's going to do is put a target on your back. Even I will put a target on your back, because it's like, eventually I will, like, Nick, I'm offering you a way out of this case with smiles and everything. Because she was saying the whole thing of, like, it's not my place to get in, mixed up in personal stuff, which Dex laughs at, because it's like, for one, personal stuff is the fact is you came to me to help get you your granddaughter back. Side note, I was wondering why that actress looked so familiar. There was something else recently I remember, I think she was in, but the thing I've recognized her from, she's Olive from Manifest, if I remember correct. I'm pretty sure that's the same actress. I could be wrong, but regardless, it's like, I'm sure it's that angle of everything, but also because of the fact that she was so against her and Benny's relationship. So it's kind of like, you really have the audacity to talk about you're not in other people's affairs, and now it's like you're telling me to back out of this situation, because it's a situation where it's like, even if Randall's doing some terrible stuff, it's like, but she's so, because she's benefiting from Randall, so for her it's a situation of, like, you're not willing to listen to Candace's side of things, which is so interesting considering all that Dex did. But I guess it's like, no matter what, even if you save my granddaughter from her particular situation, it's like, at the end of the day, business is business type of thing. Like, I think it's a thing of, like, I gotta look after everyone. I think, because I think she's looking after her entire tribe, so it's kind of like they kind of come first. No matter how thankful I am about your situation, if it conflicts with my situation, then there's going to be a problem, because I have more people that are in need. Or maybe you can make the argument, maybe Sue Lin definitely has some, like, shady connections, so she's not the most, there's some shade towards her, so. But obviously, you have Dex and Artie talking to, moving along, talking to the new lady in Randall's life. And obviously she's like, you know, he's my boyfriend. Why would I turn against him? Like, because, you know, in her eyes, it's like, he's a good guy. Until she sits down with Candace, and Candace kind of talks about everything. And obviously hearing Candace talk, she sees a lot and probably hears a lot of similarities with her own situation with Randall. But she talks about the fact is that for her, it's like everything, the only good thing that came about this whole terrible situation with Randall was the fact that she got her daughter out of it. That's the only kind of saving grace from it all. But she talks about the fact is that he pushed for her to have an abortion, but she wouldn't. And, you know, he kind of had things his way. So, and I think that's the whole reason why he kind of pays for girlfriends and stuff like that, because he wants, in a twisted way, that's he wants to feel powerful, essentially. So what that ends up coming down to. So, but the other lady has, you know, a video of him hitting her, and it's like, hey, we can use this to take him down. A moment that started happening, I started thinking about everything already said throughout the episode. I'm like, you're gonna sell that to Randall, aren't you? And lo and behold, he does, because it turns out the guy he was talking about, like, oh, like the guy who stiffed me, the guy that was shooting at us, he stiffed me for pay. So I ended up, you know, just taking the money anyway. But it's like, no, the dude explains to Dex, it's like, no, he took the evidence I had him get from me, he ended up selling it to someone else, you know, and kind of ruined my life, which it sets in Dex's mind of like, oh, he's literally a piece of shit. And it's like, oh, like at least Harvey was redeemable. Obviously, to be fair, it took a little bit for Harvey to kind of get turned around, but it's like, that's why I'm like, he kind of gets, you know, typecast in this particular, you know, back-to-back kind of scumbags. But obviously, like I said, Harvey had his redemption arc, but seems like Artie's just a straight up D-bag. And for him, it's like, oh, I told you what I'm gonna do. I manipulate and stuff like that, because I figured that whole manipulation thing he made such a point of earlier in the episode. I'm like, that's gonna come back in some shape or form, and it comes back in the hardest way, because he ends up talking about, like, because like they had that moment in the car and everything, like obviously, like once again, I love that the fact is that Dex's radio is almost like a character in itself. Like the music will come on in the most weird times and play certain songs that have, you know, but obviously it's like, oh, well, this song has a connection to Artie, but turns out not to be the case. It's complete BS. Even the story about his door, like he knew what triggers and buttons to push just to get to Dex. But part of me wonders, is it a thing of like, oh, was that 100% a lie, or were you using your own experiences to manipulate? I don't know. You know, I'm curious, like, what happened that kind of turned him into a bit of, you know, the scumbag that he is. But you can tell it seems like he does regret it, because I think he does like Dex. So there might be some truth. Maybe him and his daughter never actually made up a relationship, or maybe she died or whatever. But I think he felt bad because, like, legitimately when he looks at Dex, he might think of her. Like I said, I don't know. Because I think it also could be or it could be the angle that, you know, Dex is, Casey, like, you're never going to make it as a top PI because you do care. And that's always going to be your biggest flaw, essentially. So... And now Dex is working with Candace, saying, like, the fact of the matter is, you know, because it upset her because she got played. And it's not just on that regard. It's also because she knows what that represents for Candace potentially losing her child. It's like, no, the fact is Randall, they think that they can kind of push us around. They got the upper hand. Like, basically, they won this round, but we're going to make both of them pay. Dex is a bit personal in this regard, but like I said, I think it is also for Candace. I mean, it might be like 50-50, about 50% taking down Artie, but the other 50% is legitimately helping Candace, especially after everything. So I think that's kind of a nice, like, little situation. I wasn't expecting it to kind of be like, oh wow, and that, like, kind of cliffhanger ending of like, oh, things aren't settled. That was kind of a neat turn of events. Obviously, things aren't settled on the other side of the episode too, because there's the whole Gray versus Hoffman situation, because Hoffman comes to question Gray about the whole what was his face, Jackie Finney situation about, well, him being dead. And so it was interesting too, because it was like Hoffman was kind of bringing up the point. It was like he was double tapped, like he was, I guess, like while he was trying to run away. Like, I don't know whether he meant he was literally trying to turn his back to run away and got shot, or was it a situation of, like, metaphorically because he was running away, like, from this whole situation. Regardless, Hoffman's trying to figure out whether or not Gray has any connection in all of this, trying to figure out whether he's responsible in fact. And it turns into this whole thing of, like, Hoffman, you know, going to Dex for information, which Dex was also using him for information. It's like, wait, she's like, you really think I wouldn't notice? I had military training about, you know, kind of interrogations and stuff like that. And it's like that you're just using, not interrogations, but like tactical stuff like this to try and get information out of each other. But it ended with them like, yeah, she was about to walk away, and then immediately ended with them having sex. It was supposed to be a dinner date, and they never actually got to the dinner part of thing. So she was like, I just let you, I'm letting this is happening. I'm just want to let you know it's not because you seduce me. It's just because I want to get off. I'm like, I love that you had to add in that little distinction. Okay, and let's go back to the heavy making out. So I just thought it was kind of neat. But which that whole situation is a very complicated thing, because obviously like there's a lot about Gray's past that, like, obviously, you know, we know, because we learned last episode, like Dex and Gray, like their first meeting and all that, she knows that he went to jail. Granted, I doubt he's ever talked about the circumstances, because I think it's that thing of like Gray knows all there is to know about Dex and her life, but obviously she knows nothing about his, and that's going to be a thing going forward. I even love that the lieutenant made that story comparison of like, because it's like, oh, what about Dex? And it's like, oh yeah, the story in, was it Tokyo, about the man and the dog. The dog would go to the train with the man every day, waiting for him to come home. He died. The dog went over and over and over again to the train, waiting for its master to return. It's like an age hotel, and the dog died anyway. And it's like, oh, I get it. Dex pops up everywhere, and the lieutenant's like, no, Dex isn't the dog in this story, saying like essentially he is, and that, you know. So I thought that was kind of an interesting like comparison to make, and it kind of makes sense because it does seem like he's always following her lead, you know, kind of rather than the other way around, even though you're the one with the badge and everything. But nevertheless, it's a complicated situation because they both care about Dex, and even, you know, when it all comes down, it's like, hey, just don't let Dex get involved in all this, because obviously Gray's trying to keep his situation, but Hoffman's kind of figured it out. He's like, yeah, I know you know there's surveillance footage to prove that you went to the bar and you never came out until you legitimately left the bar. I even love the lieutenant being like, oh yeah, what's the name of the bar he has no alibi, what's the name of the bar he's from? No alibi. And it's like, yeah, that is a terrible name, especially under his current circumstances. But obviously it's something that Gray isn't talking to Dex about, just because, like I said, he doesn't want to get her mixed up in everything. Because whatever the circumstances are, he feels like it's my responsibility, it's my mess to clean up. I don't want anyone else to kind of get hurt. He even goes to Frank and is like, yeah, here's kind of like a down payment, like $8,000. It's like, oh yeah, towards that $250,000. It's like, oh no, it's not $250,000. It's half a mil now. It's like, wait, what? It's like, yeah, your buddy screwed up, so basically now Gray owes both debts. So now it's a situation of, is he going to be able to pay it off in installments and stuff like that? You know, I'm curious to see how that goes and who this Kane dude is, because it's interesting because Hoffman's like, oh, I took him down. He killed a CI of mine. It's like one of 50 bodies. He's like, so Kane sounds like a pretty bad dude. So it's the question is like, well, how did, well, I mean, I guess like, they both met him in prison and they kind of hit it off. Maybe he kind of kept him safe in prison because no one messes with him. It's like, you're my boy, so hey, when you get out, do this and do that for me. And when they did, obviously they thought like, oh, he's never going to get out, so it's never going to come back. Or maybe he was never in prison at the time. Maybe he didn't get put in prison until after he left his money to them. Maybe it was like right before he got arrested. It's like, here's my money. And they're like, oh, he's going away for a long time. He's never getting out. Oh, who cares? But it's like no matter what, it sounds like he's kind of a mobster where it's like, no, it doesn't matter if I can't use the money. It's my money. You touch it, you're dead. So it's going to be interesting to see what Gray's situation is, because Hoffman's trying to give him a way out of all of this, but it's like Gray knows that if he talks to anyone, gets the police involved, he's good as dead. So he's going to try and handle this on his own, because at the very least it's like, hey, I could keep myself alive while also making sure that no one else gets involved. So very interesting circumstances, like both major storylines still ongoing. So I'm curious to see where things kind of go on the Candace/Dex situation, you know, them going up against Randall and Artie, and what that looks like. Obviously also where this whole Gray situation goes, especially because, you know, Hoffman's investigating this, because he's going to be investigating Gray, which obviously he knows Gray's had nothing to do with this, but he's going to try and figure out what this is all about, which that's going to draw some unnecessary attention, which I'm sure Frank and Kane are not going to appreciate the cops meddling in their business. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see where all this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. Also didn't even talk about like where Sue Lin fits into all of this too. Maybe Dex will be able to kind of, have a heart to heart to her and be like, you got to help me in this situation. Randall's not a good person. There's evidence to prove it. You don't want to be associated with, an abuser and all that. So, like I said, we'll see where everything ends up taking us going forward with all of that. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Till next time with me, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.